Hey, if you're wondering how to help your child become an excellent reader, writer, speller, this is the right place for you. Hey, I'm Katie Smith. I'm a retired homeschooling mom. I'm also a life and business coach, and I love coaching families in the area of homeschooling, particularly how to have an amazing, thriving homeschool. So if your homeschool isn't thriving, I want to hear from you. Let me know what problems are happening, and then that way I can make videos and respond. So in this case, I heard from one of my coaching clients that her daughter, who is extremely brilliant, but I think she's around the age of 6, is insecure because she's not sure about her spelling. She's feeling like she's making a lot of mistakes. Now, when we are talking about becoming great spellers, there are a couple of things we must keep in mind. First of all, if you don't have a phonogram program or you don't know what phonograms are, that is a really big deal. There are 71 phonograms in the English language, and I didn't know and couldn't tell you any of them until after I started homeschooling, and I discovered this amazing woman named Wanda Sansiri. Actually, I was a coordinator at a university model school back then, and they brought in Wanda Sansiri to teach all the parents and the teachers how to use phonograms to teach reading and spelling and writing. So if you don't know Wanda Sansiri, let me show you what her little program looks like so you can find it online. This is just one part. I'm not going to go into depth on this in this video. Oh, it's reversed, but that's okay. It says 70 basic phonograms. I'll cover this more in another series, another video. But that is one thing. So write down phonograms. You need your phonogram cards. Number 2, that method, Wanda Sansiri's method, is a little bit complicated. Not going to lie. We didn't do all of it. We did one semester with a teacher who was coming alongside us using a university model. So that would mean 2 days of school in classroom with that teacher who was well practiced in this. Using the phonogram cards, and then I would do the rest at home. And so in another video I'll tell you exactly what that was, but we only did it for one semester, and that's all we needed. So it can be a very lightweight approach. Okay, phonogram cards. Number 2, if you're feeling completely beside yourself because you have no idea how to teach reading, I want to show you another resource, and it is right. I didn't pull it off the shelf. Did I pull it off the shelf? Where is it? Got so many things around me. Here it is. This is called The Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading. And before I learned about the phonogram cards, this is what I did. I absolutely loved it because it's a day-by-day lesson. Let me show you what it looks like. Okay. It tells the parents exactly what, why, and how to do the lesson. And then the lesson is down below, and it tells you exactly what to say and what to not say, so you're not confusing your child. I remember sitting on the couch with our firstborn when he was 6 years old, and this was our first semester of homeschooling, and we did just a handful of these lessons. But the number one thing you need in your homeschool, you don't have to have this, you don't have to have the phonograms. I'm just telling you, you don't have to have them. You can get started without them. You want to get them, but you don't have to have them. What must you do? What you must do, what you absolutely must do if you are going to educate your children is to help them become lovers of books. If they don't love to read, if they don't love story, if they don't love audiobooks, you've failed. And there aren't many things I'm going to say you fail about. So I'm going to point you in the direction of how do you know a good book, right? Where do you even start? When I was first homeschooling, thankfully I had read tons of books. So I had a framework, but I was leaning in classical education, which it's a great reference tool, but I don't recommend classical education. What I do recommend is the literature approach. In the literature approach, I'm just going to show you the title of this because this list is a book list from my former homeschooling mentor, somebody I still follow to this day because she does incredible research, and I absolutely love her. She's a coach as well. You can hire her to coach your family. I also do coaching, but all my clients who are doing homeschooling, I won't even coach them unless they're doing the literature approach. So I'm like, all right, so you've got to go get Carol's seminar or go hear her in person. You can go to her website. It's now called Homeschool Made Simple, and in the literature approach, which is her very first seminar, you can get this list of books, and it's literally called How to Make Your Child a Lover of Books. And if you haven't done that, don't know how to do that, boy, that's a whole nother lesson as well. But this is where you start. In this video right now, we're actually going to be talking about the second part of reading aloud, which is called narration. And if you've never done this before, you probably are like, narr what? And even, one of my clients went to a Carol Joyside seminar and somehow this part of it didn't get ingrained, which is totally possible. I've been to 8 of Carol's seminars in person. One of my best friends years ago gave me the Carol Joyside seminars on CD. That's how long ago this was. I think it was 2008. And I remember staying up and just binge listening to all of these CDs. I think it was 6 hours, and taking notes furiously because the content was so rich and it was so new to me. But that's how I coach, is the literature approach. And in the literature approach, we do great books. We do history on a 3-year cycle, and we do lots of field trips. We do all kinds of stuff. But the core of what we do is language. We are constantly listening and reading good books. And then from there, we get to narration. So this is really where we're going to dive into narration. What is narration and how to do it? So about narration. So read-alouds are excellent for developing all the language arts skills. And one of the key components is that you will include narration. The first step in narration is when you read a story to the child in age-appropriate ways. And I'm going to give you step-by-step how to do this at the end of this video. Second is to ask questions and allow the child to respond while you write down their answer. So you're literally going to read the story to the child. Then you're going to ask them to tell the story back to you in their own words. And while they're telling the story back to you, you are going to write down their story, what they tell you, with proper punctuation, with proper spelling, so that when your child traces it, they're doing it correctly the first time. This is phenomenal for language skills. You don't need a language arts curriculum, but you must do narration. Now, do you have to do it forever for 11 years of homeschooling, or however many years you're going to be homeschooling? I just picked 11 years out of the hat because our kids graduated early. I don't even remember how many years we homeschooled. I think it was 11. Yeah, it was 11. Anyway, do you need to do narration for 11 years? Not necessarily, but this is what it looks like. When your child is very young and you're about to write down what parts of the story they remember, you're just going to ask them very simple questions. What did they like about the story? What happened in the story? Very simple questions. And then you're just going to write it down. Let the child tell you the story in their own words. Avoid questions like, who is the main character? What was their favorite color? What was Sally's response to Kelly? Those kinds of questions will kill interest in the book and in narration, and you'll both be bored out of your mind. Don't do it. We want the child to love retelling stories. So we will instead ask them to tell the story back to you in your own words while you write it down. We want them to do that so that they can see the correct punctuation and spelling. That's right. In addition to comprehension, which is a skill your child will be cultivating as they do these narrations, this also allows for the practice of writing correctly the first time. So there's none of this, you send your child off to write it and then they bring it to you and you mark it up with a red pen. None of that. None of that. They're going to do it correctly the first time. Now, if they decide they want to go off and write stories on their own, that's fine. My sons have journals. Actually, it was really fun. In preparing for this video, I pulled some of their journals off the shelf, and there were stories I had never read. And I was just so in awe. My children had such a great command of the English language. Now, they were writing these stories well before the age of puberty. So there were grammatical errors, there were spelling errors, but I could still read it because they were spelling very phonetically. It was great. It was so much fun. It was really sweet to get to read those. All right, so this isn't about a word-for-word retelling of the story. Narration is not a word-for-word retelling of the story. So avoid the temptation to have them dictate the story back to you. You're not constantly correcting them while they tell the story back to you. Your job is to be their scribe. You're just going to listen and write. That's it. You are their scribe. And they will love it. and you will love it. And then you can make a portfolio of their narration. And at the end of each year, you'll have a book that you can then take to holiday gatherings, to when you see family or friends. And when they're like, what are you doing with your homeschool? You can say, actually, we brought our book along with us of narrations. Would you like to see it? And then Grandma and Grandpa or Aunt Susie or whoever can enjoy it with you. It's just so much fun. So some common questions I get is, can they do the same story again and again? The answer is yes, they could, but it will be more interesting to include other stories for narration. And it's also nice for them to see that as they gather their own narrations, they will have now a book that is full of stories. So every semester, save all those stories, put them in a binder, put them in a folder, whatever you need to do, and keep it through the years, because that way you will have a full portfolio of stories. You can use a journal like we did. We did a simple black and white journal. Oh, and I got so into reading them that I put them away. Let me show you. This is so great. So I kind of went over the top in our narrations, but this is the black and white journal. We just had a regular composition book. This was for when they were a little bit older, like above the age of 8, because the lines are really thin. There are lines that you can get that have like the top line, the bottom line, and then a dash line in the middle. Those are really great for before the age of 8. And then we would put the stories in a binder like this sometimes. So this is our son's, he did Story of the World summaries. And these are really way too detailed, but this is a perfect example. So my son would dictate what he remembered from our history reading and put it in here. That was a lot of work, and it was great. We didn't do it always, but there was a season of homeschooling where I realized we really hadn't done narration at all. And so that particular year, actually I think it was a couple of years, so that would have been like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. Those are great for doing narrations and stories. And then after that, they kind of like blossom into their own little writing world and hit puberty, and it's a different ball game then. But this is for when they're very young. Okay, so the only supplies you need: paper, pencil, lines on the paper. That's it. You really don't need anything fancy. It's wonderful. Okay, so this should be fun. If it's not fun, if the child isn't ready to do handwriting, and if it's work for them to do handwriting, don't do it. They're not ready for tracing letters, but you can still write their narrations down, and they could draw pictures to go with their narrations if they want to. Another key component to keep in mind is, if you haven't read the book, Better Late Than Early, I cannot emphasize enough the need to read that and practically understand from a human developmental perspective your child's developmental journey. You need to understand your child's developmental journey. And the book, Better Late Than Early, explains why we don't want young children doing close-up work at a young age. Their fingertips, their hand-eye coordination, they're just not mature enough to do it. And so unless your child is absolutely insisting on writing, don't force it. Let them mature into it. You can do other things to help them develop hand-eye coordination. You can trace letters on a baking sheet with, shaving cream. Or you can do Play-Doh letters. Or there's a number of different things. But letters are very abstract. They're symbols. And we're literally taking sound and putting it to symbols. That's very abstract work. So we don't need to rush that. What we do need to do is saturate our children in language. Excellent stories. And that's why I'm doing a shameless plug again for you to get Carol Joyside's seminar 1 and 2 of how to homeschool your children. It's a literature approach to homeschooling. Let's see. Oh, and there's one other thing. If you don't have a philosophy of education, that is part of Carol's seminar. And she gives quite a bunch of books, like reference books, that you should read again and again in your homeschooling journey. And you can get those in her seminar, A Literature-Based Approach to Education. I highly recommend them. And one of the books is A Better Late Than Early. So how do we do this narration? The promise of this video is that I was going to give you steps. So here they are. Number 1, how to do narration. Number 1, go potty. I'm not kidding. Your narration is going to be a mess if you don't start with some order and taking care of biology first. So number 1 is go potty. Number 2 is to get a snack and a drink in a spill-proof cup. I'm telling you, this is going to save your life. Now, you're probably like, oh my gosh, I don't want their hands with strawberries on it to be touching the books. Fine. Get wet wipes and have those next to you too. Give them their little cup of strawberries. They can eat their strawberries while they listen to you read the story. That's fine. But the idea is to take care of their biology first. Step number 3 is that we're going to get into a comfy, cozy chair or a couch or your favorite reading spot, wherever it is, and everybody cuddles up with mom or dad to read the story or to just do something quietly while the story's being read, like play with clay or draw or braid. I used to braid my doll's hair all the time. My hands, I'm a better listener if my hands are doing something. So something quiet with hands is part of number 3. We're going to get in a cozy, comfy spot with mom, and we're going to have our potty's already taken care of. We've got our snack and our drink. And we're going to do something quietly with our hands. And then step number 4 is this. After 5 to 15 minutes of reading, then we do narration with each child that can do it on their own. So what does that mean? It means that the child needs to be ready for this. If they're 3 years old, they might be a little too young, and that's okay. But if they're 4 or 5 or 6, you can ask them, tell me about the story we just read. What do you remember? And then the child will start telling you, and just keep asking them, do you remember anything else? Do you remember anything else? And you're going to write it. And then after, a few minutes, you've got a paragraph or, nothing crazy, but a good amount of words. Then you can let them start to trace it. And if their little hand gets tired, that's okay. This is not about forcing them to complete something. Their job is to learn, not to check a box. The box is learning, not checking a box. So you don't have to perfectly trace everything. If their little hand gets tired and they spoke to you and dictated to you more than they are ready to trace, that's okay. But the key here is that they're tracing their own words and they're practicing it correctly the first time. And that's really what you want to help them do. Let's see, is there anything that I missed here on my notes? Right, so when you do narration, you're also doing, 5 new phonograms every week, and you're also, doing, or you choose, to, sometimes you're going to do the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading, sometimes you're going to do the phonograms, however it works for you, and we can cover that more in another video. But these things all build on each other. But the core of it is just to read stories and have that story time. There's one more thing, and I'll close with this. A point to consider is that for many children, I would argue most children, do not spell well until after puberty. This is because, again, developmentally, things change in a child's brain at puberty. They go from concrete thinking to more abstract thinking. Spelling, it's an abstract skill. So when you're taking sounds and you're assigning symbols to those sounds, it's abstract. We just want to have age-appropriate, development-appropriate expectations for ourselves and our children. So make sure your overachieving type A personality child knows that perfect spelling is not the goal. The goal is to learn and to thrive. That's the goal, to know God and to make him known and to tell other people about Jesus. That's the goal. Not necessarily being an excellent speller when they're 6 years old. That doesn't mean they can't work towards that, but just coach their little hearts. And another video you might want to take a look at is about evaluating and anxiety. I will be linking to that in the description, and I'm going to go record it in just a minute. I hope this has helped you, and if you have any other questions, please let me know. But again, narration is really simple. Go to the bathroom, get a snack and a drink in a spill-proof cup, get in a cozy spot, read 5 to 10 minutes, have the child tell you what they remember from the story. You write it down correctly, they trace the letters, that's it. If you're doing that twice a week, that's amazing. I would say that's incredible. Reading is every day, but narration can be twice a week. Thank you so much. Can't wait to hear from you. Let me know any questions or thoughts you have from this video or any other videos you'd like me to speak to. Thanks. Love y'all. Bye.